So I'll be interviewing one of my clients, Mike Cannavina, who came to me firstly for coaching around helping things with his daughter with ADHD, actually. Like many parents with ADHD, with children with ADHD, we talked about this yesterday, it can be a real struggle to communicate in a way that keeps communication safe enough to not trigger RSD, and obviously that results in conflict, results in the opposite of cooperation and harmony. And, that's not the way we want to be with each other, with our families. So that's kind of how we started off, Mike and I, talking about and improving things with his family, with his daughter. But we very quickly went into the realm of the workplace where he basically works, is quite senior up in Petrofac. And we coached him to really understand his ADHD, to be better able to understand his agenda and communicate it, to make sure that he was putting, what he does best and getting promoted, and, making sure that he felt valued, which is really important. So Mike is here. Mike, I'm going to, okay, I'm just having a look. Okay, I'm going to promote you to panelist now. So people can hear straight from you. Here you go. I think you're rejoining the webinar as a panelist. Here's Mike. Hello. Can you hear me, Mike? Let me have a look. I think, Mike, you're on mute, so I'll just let you get yourself off mute. Hopefully we can, here we go. You're off mute now. Can't see you yet, so just need the video.
Okay. Not sure why the video's not working.
It always happens, doesn't it? The technological challenges, isn't it?
It says your video is stopped.
Ah, okay. Let me see. It could
Is
be
there something at your end, or
it could be
yes, that's worked. Your host has asked you to start your video. Okay,
perfect.
there we go.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, how are you?
Great, thanks. Yes. How are
Thank
you?
you. Yeah, good. Thanks for joining us. So basically, we've heard from Mark Allen, who I helped coach and publish his book on job seekers for ADHD. He kind of kicked off today. And then we've had a panel of the ADCA coaches. Just we're all talking about the kind of challenges ADHD clients bring and what we've been able to do through coaching to help them. So I've done a little bit of an introduction to you and told everyone about how you initially came to me to help improve communication with your daughter, but
Sure.
kind of started delving into your kind of professional life, obviously, and we did some work around your goals professionally. So I just thought, yeah, if you could come and talk about, firstly, what you learned, what benefits did you get from ADHD coaching in terms of?
Well, I guess the biggest learning for me was that I didn't really know which of my characteristics and the way I behaved and communicated were linked directly to the ADHD. And I think to me, that was the biggest eye opener, in the fact that the way I worked, the way I communicated, was a result of my ADHD. I developed coping mechanisms, not necessarily the best ones, and the ability to refine those and work at them so that I was able to understand where it was coming from and how I could deal with it.
Yeah, we did. What did you find, I guess, any particular insights about your ADHD, like perhaps patterns, things that you were doing that you weren't aware of that was related to your ADHD that we worked on that moved the dial for you?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of things I was doing was really not understanding why it was difficult to complete various tasks, and there was, in my view, I couldn't see a linkage. Why was I able to do, send an email 1 minute, but it struggled to reply, or and then feeling guilty at the end of the day of not having replied to all my emails, maybe not even read all of them. And I guess what I learned was it wasn't necessary to try and have a guilt or try and answer your own mails. I think you're never going to get through them all. And subconsciously, I was prioritizing them. But there's some I just couldn't get excited enough to reply to. They were, I was always putting them off, always putting them off. And to me, I realized, well, there are some ones now that I will prioritize. I will mark for working on that. Ones that I'll do before the end of the day, ones that I will leave for an admin day. And to me, that has really helped because it's such a sort of outside of the things that you plan to do yourself, the emails are constantly coming in and creating that sort of disruption, that interruption, and also a distraction. So I had to find a way that a system where I could deal with them and work through them, and that's worked. But I don't feel guilty about not reading all my emails. In fact, I use the Outlook function now, which is focus and the other one, and I trust the software to say, right, okay, if I have missed something, I'm sure somebody will contact me. But that whole, segregating and that's really worked. I mean, everybody be different, but I found things for me that will work. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads us to the agenda piece in terms of, because with emails, remember we talked about when you get an email, a lot of us ADHD is insight in mind, and that's what we prioritize. But then I think I asked you, like I do with a lot of other clients with ADHD, whose agenda are you following, if that's the case?
Exactly. Exactly. And, you know, I think the most difficult email for me to receive was somebody that would say, Mike, could you help me to do this? Could you, it was asking for support. And, that would become my priority. If somebody asks for help, that's what I've got to do. Whereas, now I'm much more minded to say, I'd love to help you. At the moment, it's a bit difficult. How much time have I got? When do you need it by? And,
Yeah,
and
and that
maybe
was
even point people in a different direction and say, well, why don't you speak to so and so?
yeah, and we talked about, remember we were looking at your signature strengths and values.
Mm,
And we very quickly saw that, and like many ADHDers, one of your strengths was, it's problem solving. Um,
yes,
you're kind as well. So,
yes,
if someone's in need, you usually are the person to
yeah.
be solve that problem. But there's always going to be people in need, particularly in your, senior position. There are going to be people that need help and support. But the problem is, you are the person in terms of ability to do it and your willingness is there, but what impact was that having on you?
I mean, it was. It was both personally at a personal level and work time. It would take up a lot of time, and that time was in not doing other things, creating anxiety, feeling guilty, staying up late, all of those things. And then I realised, actually, I need a lot of support as well, and so making sure that I set time to delegate things, request support. In the same way that those people were asking for support from me, I could ask for support, and I deserve it. So that to me was a real eye opener. Ask for the help, and then not ignoring those requests, but actually saying to them, I will be able to help you, and just not diving into it straight away.
Yeah, a lot of us ADHDers, we do struggle to take up space, and because of rejection sensitive dysphoria, which we talked about a lot, because with your
Yes,
strengths and in your position, it's really hard, isn't it, to set boundaries and to also prioritize your needs over
uh,
others. So difficult.
oh, absolutely. It's so difficult, and I think the phrase that you told me is that I'm able to do for others what I'm not able to do for myself. And to me, that was one of the biggest learnings. What is it I need to do for myself? Is it the fact I need to be asking for a promotion? Is it that I need to be asking for time off, flexible working, not going on that flight because it didn't suit me, and those sort of things? And it's not that difficult. If people don't know that you've got an issue, with a certain thing or a time, how can you expect them to address it or change it or modify it? And generally, if you ask, people are also willing to help or be flexible around you. So that's good. And I do it at all levels of the organization. So I don't just necessarily jump because, the email's coming from the CEO. I'll read it, I'll digest it, I'll reply. And, what I found is the holding response is just as good which is, yeah, I can give that information to you, need to wait for my colleagues to come back online in Malaysia or whatever it is. You'll have it by whenever. So
Wow.
that communication is so important. That holding response is better than sort of being in that phase of, my goodness, this is a difficult thing to do. If I do it now, it's going to take me all day. And then getting into that, really end up doing nothing with it, because you're sort of paralyzed by the whole not being able to start on it. Whereas once you've set the timeline, you've given yourself a target which you've are comfortable with, and that means that you can go back to it and you want to keep that timeline, but it doesn't have to be now.
Yeah, and the other thing about that as well is the standard that
Yes.
you set yourself. Most ADHDs set themselves, if it's not perfect, if I can't get this, give them everything, that they need and have asked for, then I can't give them any answer. It's that kind of all or
Yeah.
nothing perfectionist
Yeah.
approach. So yeah, how did coaching help you kind of break that cycle?
Really by talking it through, because it seems obvious now, but I was just doing things through either sort of impulsive, the not wanting to be wrong, and constantly worried, what will they think, what will they, the just talking through some of those issues, I realized what a disservice I was doing to myself, but also, to my colleagues, for instance. Because if they were waiting for me on something and they weren't going to get it, best that I tell them that, they'd better find another way to do it. So it's really helped. And I guess in situations like this as well, what I found is there are certain things that are hard to do. They're not easy. And you can procrastinate because they are hard to do, or you can procrastinate because you don't know where to start. And the hard to do is, it's going to be hard for anybody to do. And therefore, sometimes it's actually better to say to somebody, I think we need to work for a couple of hours together on this, and sit at my desk, work on it at a screen. Even actually now, Teams is making it so much easier, and Zoom, to work on live documents. So we could be drafting quite it could be a commercial letter and all that, and just sitting at the screen watching it. And my colleague would always, he would. I think he picked up on my RSD, or I may even told him. And it's a
Mm.
joke now that about my typing. He could type faster as long as I came out with the words. And yeah, those sort of things, just working on that would mean that we'd set ourselves a deadline jointly and
Yep.
get that letter out. And then there's no review process. We've jointly developed it.
Yeah, so that's becoming more efficient. You're using the body
Oh,
double strategy. You're leaning into interdependence,
yes. And
independent.
and I guess what I spotted as well is that perhaps some of my colleagues were having that difficulty of where to start, how to do it. And what I find is, verbally, I can actually get something started very, very quickly.
Yeah. So you're
Uh,
giving yourself permission to use your dominant process, how you do things most
yeah,
easily. Yeah.
yes, exactly. And then, you find that you have people that are absolutely willing to take down that and modify it and change it, give it back to you. So you've actually got to be very honest with how you work, which is the best style for you to work, and working with your colleagues and reciprocating. If they find, then of course, because they've helped you, you should reciprocate. And see it as, and then it's teamwork. So that
Yeah.
teamwork just happens, and you get into that style. And what you'll see is somebody said, "Do you mind if I put 20 minutes in your diary? We'll get this sorted." Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So and so you're finding what impact has that had, that ability now to lean into interdependence using the body double? What changes for you?
What it does is it means the task is completed. It's completed with sort of two brains rather than one.
The sense checking?
And it also means that it releases me and my colleagues to do other things. And even that means going home early sometimes.
So it sounds like, so work-life balance in terms of the coaching as well. How did the
Yeah.
with that?
Well, you see, what would happen is I'd procrastinate all afternoon because maybe I was tired. I'd go and get myself a coffee and, getting up all the time and, I've got to do this, got to do this, and getting distracted. And then, so if you can eliminate that, you can, you can make more time for you. But the thing is, as well, just to get to a point where you say, that's it for today, and go to the gym, go to maybe for a swim or something like that. So, I found that it's hard for me to sort of promise myself I will go to the gym and I'll do it. So I sort of pushed the coaching to, personal training, to some swim coaching as well, because then that sort of body doubling process happens again, in the fact that I've got to turn up because Paul's waiting for me in the gym. I've got to turn up on Friday for the swim because Emil's waiting for me there. And you just, in those 2 hours of exercise alone, you get such good quality exercise in that. And then, so it's so much better. But
Yeah.
what I actually found as well was just finding time to chill out, not being guilty about that. So sometimes, waking up on a Saturday morning, just think, you know what, I'm going to read the paper. I'm going to go through, it doesn't matter, because if you don't have that downtime, some other time in the weekend or the evening, you're, the body would just say, hang on, Mike, I think you need to chill out a bit. So go into the spa at the gym, sit in, there's a lot being said now about how good saunas are for detoxing and all these sort of things. But it's the silence, it's the just, and the Apple Watch as well. You find tools where it's got the mindfulness, breathing for 5 minutes. That 5 minutes goes very, very quickly, but then you've almost reset. You're calm. You can do something else. So taking 5 minutes can actually give you an hour.
Yeah, so just you sound sorry. 1 second. I think it's Halloween and but
Trick or treat, is it?
1 minute, yeah. Oh, apologies for that. This
That's
happened.
okay.
I don't know why we do ADHD Coaching Summit on Halloween. These things happen. But so would you say overall then with the ADHD coaching, in terms of you as a leader, in terms of you
Mm-hmm.
feeling that you are now finally kind of you're clear on your agenda, you feel confident that you can communicate it, you can put your needs first, you can, what impact generally did you
I
feel?
mean, it's made me far more chilled. Particularly dealing with the uh, RSD side of things. If people say certain things, it wasn't designed to hurt, but the way it was delivered, and sometimes it's hard not to react, but occasionally, I mean, actually, the other day, somebody sent me an article, and it was from the Spectator, I think, about ADHD in adults, and it doesn't exist, and it's really there for the people to make money from medication. And I read it, and I knew what the article was about, so I hadn't read it fully, but I just thought, you know what, I'm not reading that now. I'll read it in my own time. And it was an upsetting article to read. Um, but then the way I replied to that in the context of something else I was doing in my other work was, I actually think, quite brilliant, which was, so without going into the details, it served two purposes by taking some time out to think how I would replying without, actually, thanked him for sending the article, and said, yeah, but I found this, and a couple of days later, actually, I think there was an article going around in the Telegraph about a doctor who had sort of 7 coping mechanisms for ADHD, which I was able to use and say, well, here's another article, which actually, some of the stuff we're trying to do around the club and all this is, it's relevant in terms of how people enjoy the experience if they're neurodiverse, etc.
Yeah, because that is another thing I would say that you've got from ADHD coaching. You've become a real advocate for
I
ADHD at Petrofac. Uh,
Yeah,
yeah,
at
club.
club here as well.
Yep.
So I always wanted to do that. I think you realise how difficult it is when I sort of came out with that sort of long email I wrote to the HR department. But really, I think it's been such a good thing. I'm not embarrassed about it at all. Initially, I was. Now it's just like if you've been successful, you're showing people that you're trying to even improve you're constantly improving. It's not, it's no bad thing at all.
Yeah, no, well, you're a model for other ADHDers in your organization, obviously at the
Uh,
and in
yeah,
terms, yeah, the awareness training that I mean, I know that Petrofac won that diversity award
yeah,
recently, which was amazing. And you helped them win that, I would say, by advocating as well for the neurodiversity and that awareness. Uh,
yeah.
yeah.
So, I always look at this chicken and egg. I write to the HR department and tell them I have ADHD, it's been diagnosed. Then something goes round about, that we were going to talk about people, they wanted to have an awareness month around diversity and, other things. And I just said to them, does that include neurodiverse? And they went, no, we're not quite sure what to do. And that's when they approached. Do you remember when you and I did
Yeah,
a session
we did.
and very open to it and has sort of been running it since. So, yeah,
Yeah, and what impact? What did you see from that training? What benefits did you see Petrofac derive from that awareness training?
well, I think, there's a lot of people there, and I know because they've sent me messages which were, I never realized that I was struggling because it was ADHD. I thought I was lazy. I thought, and all these sort of things. But it was actually the managers of people that said, one of my subordinates went to that and they've asked if we could do things differently. And I said, it's really, really helpful. So to me, that was the real thing. I had 1 or 2 parents that worked in different offices ring me to ask advice, but I think what they were really getting to is, I think I've got ADHD as well, and what should I do about it? And the first thing I say is, look, I'm not going to diagnose it for you. You've mentioned traits there which do that, and I'd suggest that you get it properly diagnosed and you try and help yourself, which is good. But you could almost see a weight lifted off their shoulders.
And how does that feel though, being able to do that for people?
That's really great because you realise you have changed, and we saw, didn't we, the other day around that table, how many people were sort of nodding at the things that we were saying, and that sense of, oh, I get it now. I understand why that's happening.
Yeah, and that I guess is another huge benefit for you of the coaching and the training, being able to advocate and then go on to provide that kind of life-changing support now that they
Yeah,
when you know better, they can now do better. There's that opportunity. So no, it's been great.
absolutely. Yes, well worth it. The other thing I would say is you sort of need to check in once in a while because you learn new ways of doing things and new habits, but they can get broken quite easily.
Oh, boring.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so like for instance, having a routine the night before as to what you're going to do in the morning. It doesn't take too long before you don't do it once, you don't do it twice, and then your morning falls apart again. So
Yeah.
best to
Yeah.
keep on top of it. Yeah,
And keep your eye on your why. That's the other thing. And I've got
yeah,
Sophie in. But we talk about in coaching, don't make the method the goal.
exactly.
problem solvers. I think Seth's a bit the same as well. You know, you are quite process oriented and you're very good at the analytical and improving things. And sometimes, you know, we can get stuck hyper focused on the method and lose sight of the goal. So I think, yeah, and I think the leadership group that you're both in, hopefully that's helping you, you know, get
Mm,
clear, keeping your eye on that why, and you know,
exactly.
yeah. Thank you, Mike.
No problem.